Today, let's get to listen to stories of triumph amidst failures, courage despite fear, strength through weakness, and even the occasional hopeful cheer from personal punny experiences. I am your host, RKaye, and this is the BetterU podcast. What is up, fam? Welcome to another episode of the BetterU podcast. Coach RKaye here, and today we are answering yet another common question that most people ask when they start off their fitness journey and they begin to finally be consistent with training. All right, so for today's episode, this may be just a fair warning. This may be a continuing series of episodes because today we will be tackling some of the common mistakes. I don't really like the term mistakes, but for the sake of, we will use that term. So we will be answering some or revealing most of the common mistakes or some of the common misconceptions when someone begins their fitness routine. And mistakes are something that I think are a little, it's a very heavy term. So I'd like to say we use misconception or possibly even common myths that people think of are better than what it actually should be. So let me start off with one possibly the most common, which is when I train, I have to do something overly hard or complicated. Otherwise, it is not going to be an effective training session, or my workouts will not be as effective as they are. All right. And to tell you frankly, I have seen this time and time again when I was still in a big commercial gym. A lot of people tend to stick with training programs which I feel aren't really at par with their current physical fitness readiness. All right. I've seen way too many times where people try to execute a much more complicated move than they should be performing. All right. And I mean, kudos to them trying out or wanting to do something challenging. But in terms of progress, guys, please be very mindful of starting off with the basics, all right? People often think that when they start off their fitness journey, it has to be extra complicated. Their programs have to be super hard. It doesn't have to be that way, all right? Especially when you're starting off from scratch or coming back from being so sedentary for quite a number of months, maybe years. All right. I know for a fact it's a little ego boost, right? If we are able to perform something complex, it makes us feel a lot more self-confident and we feel like we've done a better job than we would normally do, right? But also in terms of our well-being, when it comes to starting off a training program, if you go instead from step 1, you go straight to step 10 and miss all the other steps between, it kind of makes things a little bit on safety issue. that is quite something that would
really make it hard to, not get injured. All right. So in terms of sustaining your own physical well-being, it may actually hinder you from really progressing in a normal or in the usual way that a progression should go. All right. Again, I am not saying that you cannot do these complex moves or these more complicated programs. You can. But as a word of advice, a lot of us trainers, we always really want our clients to be safe. So taking on the basic movements, I know in terms of ego, you're gonna be telling yourself this is just so simple. Yes, I know, but the simpler moves, the basic moves, the classic movements, these are your foundations, all right? So think of yourself as a building that's being constructed, right? You want to make sure that when you build on your own self, all right, you build on a stable base. And that will be the very basic movements, your core movements, your beginner movements, quote unquote. I also don't like to be using beginner advanced kind of terminologies because it kind of, nowadays, comparing yourselves to others is something that a lot of people do and we cannot really avoid it. But yeah, so again, going back, it is very important to be able to do the very basics first, start off with that, and then proceed gradually into something more complex. So again, that is probably one of the most common that I've ever seen to be a misconception. A lot of people think that, oh no, I don't like this program. It's too simple. I want something extra, extra hard. Okay. So again, you can go on to those extra hard, extra challenging programs when you've gone through the formative stages of your training routine. And I know for a fact, I myself have been that way. I want to do the extra challenging stuff. But, you know, in terms of your body recovering as well, it may not be a good thing to rush yourself to something extremely complicated at first go. All right. Another thing that is closely related to this particular misconception or mistake when it comes to starting off your fitness journey is being impatient when it comes to seeing the results that come together with being able to stay consistent with your training. And oftentimes, um, I don't know, people just have this concept of wanting to deal with their fitness journey and their progress in such a short amount of time. And people give themselves such a quick, deadline, or even you can even say it's like an ultimatum for people. Like, oh, I want to be able to lose X amount of weight in 7 days. And people kind of get a little bit too, misled by a lot of these common challenges, especially if you look through many online resources, YouTube is a great example. And I'm not saying that these timelines are not a possibility. Of course, if you put yourself into it, if you really stick to the routine and be strict about it, you will be able to achieve the goal that you want. But the issue here is the level of impatience. All right. And there is no such thing as a quick result or, an overnight change that will happen that will stick with you for the rest of your lifetime. All right. And to me, especially, I don't know with other coaches, but generally speaking, I believe there's a bigger chunk of the fitness industry who believes that longevity is a lot more important than short outcomes that happen when you get yourself into a regular fitness routine. All right. To me, I certainly advise everyone who are listening today and watching to have a little more patience in them, all right? Again, when it comes to making changes to your physical appearance, whether it's gaining muscle, gaining strength, losing the pounds, there are quite uh, so many factors that will, come into play when you want these goals to be reached and these results to happen. And unfortunately, we all do not live in a world where all we can do is just eat, train, rest, eat again, all right? In a perfect world, that would be such a great thing. But even with us in the fitness industry, that sometimes does not happen. We want to go to work and, have a decent meal during the right times in the day, but sometimes you don't get to. We want to train, but instead of being able to train for our own time, we sort of do other things in our personal lives in exchange for those times. And, again, life will always hit you with curveballs and you just gotta go with the flow, all right, guys? So, again, in terms of your fitness routine, staying true to your consistency and your training, it may take a little bit longer than you would have imagined in your brain, in your mind. But again, if you just stay patient and if you stay consistent with the many different mini, even however mini or micro these habits are, when they combine and through the week, the months, the years of doing it consistently, you will see the exact results that you want, maybe even more. All right. Just be patient and be very wary of these short term goals, because oftentimes what happens is you get burned out or you get so sick of that diet that you did for a month or two, right? So what happens is instead of making it or turning it into a productive process for your progress, it becomes something that you do, that will counter the effects that you would have wanted for yourself. Okay. So that is what we get to talk about in today's episode, guys. I know, again, I always get a little bit, I would call it emotional, but I always get into this kind of internal debate in myself because I I relate so much with some of these common ideas. I have had belief in some of these long ago as well, so I do have a lot of different experiences that I have had. Uh, I have had stories in my own lifetime, especially back in the day. But yes, again, these are a lot of different issues that people get to experience, even us fitness pros who have been in the industry for quite a while. We have had experiences as well, personal experiences, where we have gone through these common issues. And again, based on what I have experienced, that is what I share with you guys. So, yeah, just to remind you that, again, you have to be very patient with your fitness journey and that you really need to stick with the basics each and every time. The basics are always, always gold when it comes to your fitness routines and training programs. All right, guys, so that is it for us today. We will surely continue this question in the next few episodes of the BetterU podcast. All right, guys. So thank you again so much for joining me in today's episode. And if you have not yet done so, please do subscribe to the channel because it does help a lot. And as always, if you have any questions, if you would like me to answer any questions that you have, maybe that can be our next episode. All right, so just leave those in the comment section, or maybe if you just want to say hi, hello, I'll do my best to say hello back as soon as I can. All right, guys. So again, thank you for joining me for today's episode of the BetterU podcast. Coach RKaye here, reminding you always to never give up on your movement journey because it's never too late to move. Bye, guys.